I caught my wife cheating with my boss. That night should have broken me, but instead, it sparked a plan that would tear their lives apart piece by piece. Finding out that my wife was having an affair, with my boss no less, should have shattered me. Honestly, it almost did. But instead of falling apart, I found myself quietly putting together a plan that would flip everything on its head and leave both of them wishing they'd never betrayed me. My name's Ryan. I'm 35 and I've been married to Lena for 8 years. From the outside, we looked like the textbook example of a happy couple. We had stable careers, a cozy little home in the suburbs, and that kind of easy connection that made people smile and say, "You two just make sense together." Lena was the kind of woman who could light up a room, sharp, charming, and always quick with a comeback. It was that blend of confidence and mystery that drew me in so fast all those years ago. But lately something had shifted. At first it was subtle, small things that, on their own, wouldn't raise an eyebrow. But when those little things start stacking up, you can't help but notice. Lena's always valued her privacy, but over the last few months she became almost secretive. She'd get text messages late at night and subtly angle her phone away from me as she read them. I'd ask who it was and she'd just laugh, brushing it off like I was being silly. "It's just my sister, or maybe someone from work," she'd say with that teasing smile. "Ryan, you've got to stop imagining things." 3 months ago is when it all really started to shift between us. Lena grew distant, like her heart was no longer in the same room even when her body was. The quiet moments we used to share at night turned into long, uncomfortable silences. And physically, it was like a switch had been flipped. The intimacy that once brought us so close had vanished. I tried reaching out, offering affection, asking if something was wrong, but she always had a reason to pull away. "I'm just tired," she'd mutter. "Work's been crazy." I told myself it was just a rough patch, that maybe she was just overwhelmed. But deep down I could feel something slipping away. Lena's always had a gift for keeping her emotions under lock and key. You'd never guess what she was truly feeling unless she let you in. But even someone as composed as her couldn't hide everything. I saw it in the way she wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked about her day. I saw it when she started coming home later than usual, always with some perfectly rehearsed excuse. "Just grab dinner with a friend," she'd say. Or, "We've got this last-minute project at work." Every explanation sounded flawless, and for a while I almost convinced myself to believe her. Almost. Then came the invitation. My boss, Mark, gave me a call like he always did when he was throwing one of his low-key dinner parties. "Hey Ryan, you and Lena still good for Saturday?" he asked, his voice as casual and confident as ever. "Melissa's already planning everything, and you know how disappointed she gets if someone backs out last minute." For a moment I hesitated. Things had been tense at home and the idea of playing happy couple felt off. But maybe this was the kind of night we needed, something familiar to break the monotony. Mark's get-togethers were usually relaxed affairs. Just a few co-workers and their partners, some decent wine, and enough small talk to make it feel like a break from reality. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "We'll be there." That week felt like a blur, work, sleep, repeat. Lena didn't mention the party until the night before when I casually brought it up over dinner. I expected her to bail, maybe claim she had other plans. But to my surprise she seemed almost excited. "Oh right, Mark's dinner?" she said, a weird glint in her eye that made me pause. "Yeah, should be fun." Saturday arrived and we pulled up to Mark's place right around dusk. His house was impressive but warm, not the show-off kind, more like a Pinterest-perfect family home. Lights were strung across the backyard, and you could already hear laughter spilling from inside. Melissa was moving around the kitchen when we walked in, offering hugs and making everyone feel like old friends. Mark met us at the door, smiling as always. "Ryan, Lena. Glad you could make it," he said, giving me a friendly pat on the back before turning to greet Lena with a hug that lasted a second too long. "Melissa's roasting something amazing and I've got that Merlot you like chilling. Go grab a drink and make yourselves at home." As we stepped inside, I spotted Brian and Samantha, another couple from the office, chatting near the bar. Brian was the kind of guy who could make any conversation feel lighthearted, even during work chaos. We said hello, exchanged a few jokes, and for a while, it felt like just another Saturday night. Familiar faces, friendly vibes, and a little wine to ease the tension. Still, something didn't sit right. There was this subtle tension in the air, like a string stretched too tight, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Lena was suddenly all smiles and laughter, chatting with everyone like she hadn't been cold and distant for weeks. But her laugh? It didn't sound like the Lena I knew. It felt performative, like she was trying to play a part. What really got to me, though, were the glances. Mark kept sneaking these short, almost imperceptible looks in her direction. Just flickers, nothing obvious, but I saw them. And once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. Mark had always been a bit of a flirt, the kind who'd charm a room without ever crossing the line, or at least that's what I used to think. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, that maybe I was just hypersensitive because of the tension between me and Lena. But deep down I felt it, like there was a hidden layer to the night that I wasn't seeing clearly. That feeling only intensified as the evening went on. I didn't know it yet, but my gut had been trying to tell me the truth all along. Dinner was going smoothly on the surface. We were all seated around the table, savoring Melissa's roast, sipping wine, and swapping harmless stories about work and weekend plans. It had the illusion of normalcy, like we'd slipped into a familiar rhythm that made you forget your worries for a while. Then Lena got up from the table, saying she needed to use the restroom. A minute or two later, Mark stood as well, mentioning he was heading down to the cellar to grab another bottle of wine. "You're going to love this one, Ryan. It's one of my favorites," he said with that easy grin before disappearing into the side hallway. The rest of us stayed behind, laughing at something Brian had said. I tried to stay engaged, but my thoughts kept drifting. Something about the timing, it didn't sit right. Lena hadn't come back yet, and the longer she was gone, the louder that little voice in my head got. I turned to Melissa, trying to keep things light. "I think I'll go check on Lena," I said, managing a polite smile. "She's been gone a bit." Melissa's smile was soft, but there was something behind it, an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Of course," she said easily. "The bathroom's just down the hallway, first door on the left. I'm sure she's fine." I gave her a quick nod and walked away from the table, trying to brush off the growing tightness in my chest. The hallway was quiet, the sounds of dinner chatter fading with each step. When I reached the bathroom, the door was slightly open, the light off. I pushed it open gently. Empty. I stood there for a second, confused. Maybe she'd stepped into another room? Maybe she took a call or needed a moment alone. But none of it felt right. I started down the hall, past the familiar guest bedroom and Mark's office, unsure exactly what I was even looking for. Then I saw it, a faint glow coming from a hallway that led toward the back of the house. Something about that quiet light made my stomach twist. I hesitated. I told myself again that I was overreacting, that this was probably nothing. But my feet moved anyway, pulling me toward the light. And I couldn't stop thinking about the way Melissa had looked at me, not surprised, not confused, almost like she was expecting me to go. I reached the end of the hallway and slowly opened the door, expecting, hoping, to find Lena out on a back patio or maybe curled up on a couch. But the room was empty. Just a softly lit den, quiet and undisturbed. No Lena. No Mark. I stood there in the doorway, my mind spinning. I could have gone back to the table. Pretended I hadn't noticed anything. But that nagging feeling was louder now, insistent. Something was off. Something was happening right under my nose. Then I remembered the wine cellar. Mark had said he was going down there. It was tucked away in the basement, through a narrow stairwell at the far end of the house. A place out of sight. Out of earshot. And suddenly, I knew exactly where I needed to go. As I made my way down the narrow staircase, I could hear the soft whirring of the wine cellar's cooling unit humming steadily in the background. The further I went, the more the air shifted, cooler, heavier, and I could feel my chest tightening. A faint glow leaked out from beneath the cellar door, casting a low line of light onto the steps. My hand hovered over the doorknob, frozen for a second. Some part of me didn't want to know. Didn't want to confirm what I was already fearing. But I had to. I took a breath, gripped the handle and pushed the door open. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like the floor fell out from under me. There they were, Mark and Lena, right in the middle of that dimly lit room. He was on top of her, his hands shamelessly roaming across her body, her dress bunched up, her blouse hanging open. They were so lost in each other they hadn't even noticed me. My heart was pounding, my mind torn between disbelief and fury. It was like watching a nightmare unfold, and yet I couldn't look away. "Lena!" I shouted, my voice bouncing off the stone walls like a gunshot. Mark's head whipped around, his expression flipping from pleasure to panic in a heartbeat. Time seemed to freeze. Then instinct took over. I stormed forward, grabbed him by the collar, and yanked him off of her. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over himself, his face pale with shock. "What the Ryan?" he stammered, but I cut him off cold. "One wife not enough for you, Mark?" I said through gritted teeth, my voice shaking with fury. "Or do you just get a thrill out of violating people's trust?" Lena was scrambling to fix her clothes, her face red, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't find the words. I didn't want to hear it anyway. The betrayal hit like a wave, crashing over everything I thought I knew. I stood there, stunned and disgusted, realizing how easily they had both lied to my face. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out, every step echoing in that cellar like thunder in my ears. I could hear Mark behind me trying to follow, his voice cracking with some pitiful explanation, but I was done. With him. With her. With all of it. By the time I got back upstairs, the laughter and conversation were still flowing in the dining room, the others completely unaware of the disaster that had just detonated beneath them. Brian looked up, smiling. "Hey Ryan. Find her?" he asked lightly, clearly trying to joke around. But his smile vanished when he saw my face. "Oh, I found her," I said flatly. "She was in the wine cellar. With Mark." I paused, then looked directly at Melissa. Half-dressed. Lying beneath him. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Brian's eyes went wide, and Samantha clutched her wine glass like she wasn't sure if she should drop it or throw it. Melissa blinked slowly, her face unreadable for a moment. And then, without a word, she stood. Her face drained of color, her hands trembling at her sides. But then her expression hardened, like steel, and she turned on her heel and headed straight for the basement. No one said a word. We just listened. First the thuds of her footsteps going down, then, there it was. A scream. High-pitched, furious, raw. Then came the slaps. Loud. Sure. Unapologetic. "You revolting, backstabbing liar." Melissa's voice carried through the whole house. "How long? How long have you been sneaking around behind my back? In my home?" Mark must have been trying to talk, his voice muffled, desperate, but Melissa was having none of it. Another slap. Then another. Each one like a gunshot of truth that none of us could ignore. I looked around the table. Brian and Samantha were frozen in place, pale and stunned. Finally, they stood up without a word, grabbed their coats and quietly slipped out the front door. I didn't blame them. No one wants to be there when the truth finally detonates. The shouting went on for what felt like forever, until we heard Melissa again, her voice clear and cutting. "Get out. Both of you. Now." Then came the hurried steps. Lena and Mark, making their shameful exit. Clothes half put together, their eyes probably fixed on the floor, trying to avoid any more humiliation. The front door opened, then slammed shut with a sharp finality, and suddenly the whole house went quiet, eerily quiet. I just sat there, motionless, staring at the half-full glass of wine in front of me, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. My wife. My boss. Together. The betrayal settled over me like a storm cloud, heavy and choking. It felt like my entire world had tilted on its axis, and I was just sitting there watching everything I knew come apart at the seams. A few minutes passed before Melissa returned to the dining room. She looked like someone who had just gone to war. Her face was flushed, her hair a little undone, and her shoulders carried the weight of something she hadn't been prepared to face. But there was also a strange calm in her eyes, like whatever fire had just burned through her had cleared the way for something colder, more resolute. She didn't say a word at first. Just walked over to the wine bottle, poured herself a deep glass and sat down across from me at the table. We looked at each other, two people who had both just had their trust shattered. It felt surreal. Just a few hours ago, I thought I was walking into a friendly dinner party. Now here I was, sitting across from a woman whose life had just been torn apart by the same two people who had ripped mine to pieces. She took a long sip of her wine, then slowly set the glass down. Her voice was low, almost tired. "Well," she said, "looks like we both had a hell of a night." I didn't know how to respond. What do you say to someone who just walked in on her husband with your wife? I could still hear the echo of her voice down in the cellar, the slap of her hand against his face, the raw hurt in her screams. I had wanted to do the same, to lash out, to break something, but instead all I felt was empty. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, not even sure what I was apologizing for. For being the messenger? For not seeing it sooner? For being part of the nightmare? Melissa gave me a faint smile, sad, tired, but not bitter. "Don't be. You didn't do this. We just happened to fall for people who didn't deserve us." She stared down at her glass, the wine swirling slowly as she tilted it in her hand. "I've been married to Mark for 15 years, she said, almost to herself. 15 years of loyalty, of building a life together. And now, I don't even recognize him." I nodded slowly. I thought Lena and I were solid. Sure, we'd been off lately, but I never imagined, with Mark of all people. Melissa let out a dry, humorless laugh. "That's the thing about betrayal, it never comes from your enemies." She looked up at me then, her eyes narrowing slightly. "So what now? What are you going to do?" I didn't even hesitate. I'm leaving, I said. I can't stay with her after this. There's no coming back from it. Melissa nodded like she'd been expecting that. Same here. I think I knew something was off for a while, but I kept telling myself it was just work stress or distance. But tonight? No more excuses. I'm done. She took another sip, then set her glass down with a soft clink. But you know what? I'm glad you said something. If you hadn't, I probably would have kept lying to myself, trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. So, thank you. Really. We sat there in silence for a while, the wine helping to numb the sharp edges of the evening. There was a strange comfort in sharing that space with someone who knew exactly how it felt, to be blindsided, to be made a fool of, to watch the people you love choose betrayal. As we talked, the numbness began to shift. Something sharper started to take its place. Anger. Not the kind that flares up and disappears, but the slow-burning kind. The kind that makes you want justice or maybe just a little revenge. Eventually, Melissa leaned forward, her voice low and steady. I'm not letting him walk away from this like it never happened, she said, her expression fierce. He thinks he can just cheat on me and carry on like nothing's changed? He's wrong. I'm going to sue him for everything, house, car, his share in the company. He's going to feel this. I looked at her, a bit stunned, but I couldn't help the admiration rising in me. There was a strength in her eyes now. A resolve that hadn't been there earlier. You're serious? I asked. Dead serious, she said, the corners of her lips curling into a grim smile. He's been lying and playing games for years. But this was the final straw. I'm going to make sure he regrets it every single day. I sat up a little straighter. The pain was still raw, but for the first time that night I felt something close to hope. What can I do to help? I asked. Because I'm done playing nice. If there's a way to make Lena feel the fallout from this, I'm in. All the way. Melissa looked at me, her expression softening slightly. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, followed by a quiet understanding. Well, Ryan, she said, if you're really ready to get your hands a little dirty, I think we can come up with something that'll leave a mark. That night marked a shift. The planning began, not just vague talk but real steps toward making them both wish they'd never crossed us. Melissa wasn't just sharp, she was calculated. I could see now why Mark had always walked on eggshells around her. She had the kind of mind that could break a man down without ever raising her voice. First moves the divorce, she said matter-of-factly, swirling the wine in her glass. But not just any divorce, I want every last cent exposed. Full financial disclosure, no hidden accounts, no secret investments. I've got a lawyer who specializes in high-stakes separation, and she doesn't play around. I nodded, the wheels already turning in my own mind. That's good. He deserves every bit of it. But I want more than just a clean break from Lena. I want people to know who she really is. She's built this perfect image for years, always polished, always in control. But underneath that, she's a liar. And I want that mask ripped off. Melissa raised a brow, intrigued. You have something in mind? I've been watching her for weeks, I told her. She thought she was being discreet, new passwords, late-night texts, always deleting things. But I've still got access to a lot of her digital life. Emails, cloud backups, browser history. I've already spotted a few cracks. I think if I dig deeper I'll find more. Maybe even enough to wreck her reputation for good. She leaned in, her expression focused. And you think you can catch her red-handed? I do, I said, nodding. But I'll need help. If she sees this coming, she'll start covering tracks fast. I need to be ahead of her every step of the way. Melissa's lips curved into a cold, knowing smile. Then here's what we do. I'll keep Mark on the ropes. While he's caught up in court filings and scrambling to keep his assets from slipping away, you go after Lena. Peel back every layer she's been hiding behind. The lies, the affairs, the secrets. We'll make sure neither of them walks away from this untouched. And just like that, we had a mission. It felt strange how empowering it was. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I was furious, yes, but I was also laser-focused. And I wasn't doing this alone. Melissa was every bit as determined as I was. Together, we mapped out a strategy that night, step by step, playing off each other's strengths, turning grief into momentum. To revenge, she said softly, raising her glass. To making them regret everything, I replied, clinking mine against hers. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't in a while, clarity. I didn't know where all of this would end, but I was ready to take it as far as it needed to go. Steve and Lena had thought they could betray us and walk away clean. What they didn't realize was that they'd ignited something dangerous. Two people with nothing left to lose and every reason to burn it all down. We wasted no time. Melissa was the first to strike. By morning, she had filed the paperwork and launched the opening salvo of what was going to be a brutal divorce. But not before she'd gathered everything: joint account records, business ledgers, even proof of a few questionable tax write-offs. She wasn't just fighting for her share. She was going for the jugular: the house, the cars, and Mark's equity in the company. He didn't see it coming. When the papers were delivered, he was blindsided. I heard from a coworker later that he looked like he'd seen a ghost when he walked into the office that morning. Melissa had hired a shark of an attorney, someone who'd torn apart men just like Mark before, and she had no intention of showing mercy. While he was drowning in paperwork and damage control, it gave me the perfect cover to move forward with my own part of the plan. I started digging through everything Lena hadn't scrubbed. Her emails, her message history, her shared calendars. She was smart but not invincible. Within days I had proof: emails between her and Mark booking hotel rooms using fake names. But that wasn't all. There were messages to other men too. She'd been living a double life longer than I'd realized. I didn't stop there. I hired a private investigator, someone discreet and experienced. I wanted proof that couldn't be dismissed. And what he brought back made my stomach churn. Photos, call logs, timestamped videos. The truth laid out in brutal detail. It was painful to see. But at the same time, it gave me exactly what I needed to move forward. The first step in my plan was simple: tear the mask off Lena's perfect image. For years she'd played the role flawlessly: charming, kind, the woman everyone admired. But I knew better now, and I wanted the people around her to see it too. I took everything I had gathered: screenshots of messages, email threads, timelines that proved where she had been and who she'd been with, and put it all together. Not messy. Not vengeful. Just clear, undeniable evidence. Then I sent it to a few carefully chosen people. Her closest friends, some family, even a few of her co-workers. People she had lied to, manipulated, leaned on while spinning her web. I didn't want to destroy her life. I wanted to let the truth do that on its own. But I didn't stop there. I created an anonymous social media profile and began posting snippets, edited just enough to stay on the safe side of legal but still damning. Screenshots of conversations, hints at hotel rendezvous, and vague timestamps. I didn't name names, but anyone close to her would recognize what it was about. It wasn't long before the whispers started. And the more people talked, the more her facade began to crack. Her image, so carefully curated over years, started to crumble. And for once, she had no way to control the narrative. Once that was in motion, I turned to the next front: money. Lena had dipped into our shared accounts to fund her little affairs, and I made sure every cent was accounted for in the divorce paperwork. My attorney laid it out: receipts, charges, all tied back to things she couldn't explain away. She tried to fight it. She thought she could spin the story like she always had. But this time there was no spinning it. She ended up owing me more than she ever expected: reimbursement for her trips, and then some. Between that and her rising legal fees, she was struggling. And honestly, watching her unravel, piece by piece, gave me a dark, cold satisfaction. It didn't fix the pain, but it did help dull the edge. Meanwhile, Melissa was running her own offensive. And she was winning. Mark was drowning, trying to patch holes as fast as they opened. Melissa's lawyer was digging through years of shady deals and financial shortcuts, and with every revelation, Mark's position grew weaker. She had gone after more than just the house and the cars; she wanted his business too. And with everything unraveling around him, he didn't have the leverage to stop her. Then came the final blow. Mark's company was hosting a big dinner, some high-stakes client event that could have saved him. It was his last hope to stabilize things after months of chaos. Melissa and I both knew how badly he needed that deal to go through. And that's exactly why we made sure it didn't. Thanks to some well-placed contacts, I got my hands on the guest list. And then, using another anonymous account, I sent out quiet little warnings, just enough details to spark doubt. A tip about his ongoing affair. A suggestion that he wasn't who he claimed to be. A reminder that scandal can taint a brand fast. By the time that dinner rolled around, the damage had already been done. Whispers followed him from the moment he walked in. Eyes darted his way. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone. And by the end of the night, he'd lost the client. The deal fell through. And with it, any chance of keeping his company afloat. Melissa called me a few weeks later. We hadn't spoken in a little while, and the sound of her voice was calm, but there was a spark there too. "It's done," she said, her words crisp. "I got the house, the car, and half the company. He's still trying to act like he's in control, but it's over. He knows it. I couldn't help but smile. I'm glad. You earned every bit of that. She hesitated, then asked, and Lena? She's paying the price, I replied. She's struggling with the payments. Last I heard, she's bouncing between friends' couches and trying to convince people she's the victim. But no one's really buying it anymore. We both went quiet for a moment. There was no celebration. No gloating. Just that deep, settling relief that comes when the truth finally wins. To never being made fools of again, Melissa said, lifting a glass from wherever she was. Cheers to that, I answered, raising mine too. Even if she couldn't see it. In the aftermath, life shifted in a way I hadn't expected. Melissa followed through on everything she'd said she would. When the dust settled, she took over Mark's shares. Just like that, she became the new head of the company. It shocked everyone at the office. There was gossip, of course. Whispers in the halls. Some people were stunned. Others? Secretly impressed. But no one doubted she had earned it. As for me, I wasn't sure where I stood at first. After everything, part of me wanted to leave, to put it all behind me and start fresh somewhere far away from the wreckage. But Melissa wouldn't hear of it. She sat me down one day and said plainly, "You've done nothing wrong, Ryan. You're not the one who should disappear." So I stayed. "Ryan," Melissa said one afternoon during one of our earliest meetings after she officially stepped into her new role, "I know things have been messy, personally, professionally. But that doesn't change the fact that you've always been one of the strongest players we've got here. I don't want to lose you just because of what Mark did. I need people I can count on. And I trust you." Sitting across from her in what used to be Mark's office, it felt surreal. But not wrong. Everything had shifted, yes, but in that moment, it felt like it had landed exactly where it was meant to. Melissa wasn't just filling Mark's chair, she was reimagining what leadership looked like. And it felt like a fresh start. I nodded slowly, grateful for her directness. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "This place has always meant something to me. We've both been through hell, but maybe we can turn it into something worthwhile." And that's exactly what we did. In the months that followed, Melissa and I worked side by side, rebuilding the company from the inside out. Her style was sharp, clear expectations, honest feedback, and a no-nonsense approach to accountability. But there was also compassion there, a genuine desire to create something sustainable and strong. People noticed. Clients came back. The team started believing again. And she didn't forget about me. One afternoon, she called me into her office again. I'd been promoted before, sure, but this time felt different. There was something thoughtful in her smile as she slid an envelope across the desk. "I've been thinking about this for a while," she said. "You've stuck with this company through everything and you've never let up. I want you in a senior leadership role, if you're ready." I opened the letter. A substantial promotion. A real leap forward. I looked up, a bit stunned. "You're sure?" She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. You know this company inside out. More than that, I trust you. And I need people like you if we're going to take this place where it needs to go." So I accepted. And from that point forward, everything began to shift in a new direction. Working for Melissa wasn't like working under Mark. There was no ego, no manipulation, no silent power plays. She was decisive but open. She invited feedback and gave credit where it was due. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my work actually mattered. Within weeks, we started to see the impact. Productivity went up. New clients signed on. And the atmosphere? It was lighter. People were engaged, motivated. We weren't just a team again, we were a force. Melissa and I built a strong, professional partnership. We didn't have to talk about what we'd both been through. It lingered in the background, an unspoken thread that tied us together. But it gave our dynamic a quiet strength. We understood loss. We understood betrayal. And we both chose to rise from it. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far we came in such a short time. I went from watching my life collapse to finding a renewed sense of purpose in a place I once considered walking away from. All of it because someone decided to believe in me when I couldn't even see straight. Melissa wasn't just a boss, she was someone who had walked through fire beside me. And together we had taken the ashes and built something better. In the end, revenge wasn't the destination, it was just the door. What mattered most was what came after. The rebuilding. The healing. The strength we found not in destroying them, but in proving they couldn't destroy us. And with Melissa at the helm, I had no doubt. We weren't just surviving, we were finally winning. As for Mark, my former boss, he didn't just vanish into obscurity, though he probably wished he could have. Word started to spread that he'd found someone new not long after Melissa kicked him out and took over the company. I wasn't shocked. Guys like him always seem to land on their feet, latching onto someone else, always looking for a way to stay relevant. But it was obvious he wasn't living the life he used to. The power, the influence, the smug confidence he once wore like a second skin, it was gone. He'd lost his company, his marriage, and most of the relationships he'd built over the years. Now he was just another man trying to rebuild from the wreckage he caused. And then there was Lena, my ex-wife. I'd be lying if I said I never thought about her. There were times when memories would creep in, her voice, her laugh, that moment when she tried to lie her way out of the affair even though I had caught her red-handed. But after the truth came out, after her world unraveled and she was left to face it all on her own, I didn't reach out. And she never reached out to me. Part of me figured she thought she'd end up with Mark. That once the dust settled, they'd ride off into the sunset together. But that's not how it played out. Mark, true to form, bailed. As soon as things got hard, once his business crumbled and his reputation took a hit, he cut her loose. Just like that. Lena had destroyed our marriage for him, and in the end, he tossed her aside like she meant nothing. I heard bits and pieces through old mutual friends. Apparently, she didn't see it coming. She had counted on him, thought he'd be her safety net. But Mark used her just like she had used me, until she was no longer useful. Then he moved on, and she was left picking up the pieces of a life she'd shattered with her own choices. There was something almost poetic about it. Lena had been chasing something more thrilling than stability, more exciting than the quiet, consistent love I offered. And Mark? He was chasing ego, chasing admiration no matter where it came from. In the end, they both got exactly what they deserved. Looking back now, I still can't fully believe how it all happened. How people I trusted, people I would have defended with my whole heart, could betray me in such a cold, calculated way. But what surprises me more is how much I grew from it. I found strength I didn't know I had. I found clarity. And I found a partnership with Melissa. Something built not on lies or appearances, but on mutual respect and hard-earned trust. These days, I wake up with a quiet peace I never thought I'd find again. The ghosts of what happened don't follow me anymore. I'm not haunted. I'm not angry. Lena is just a name in a chapter I've finished reading. And Mark? He's a footnote in a lesson I'll never forget. Melissa, on the other hand, has proven to be more than just a survivor. She's a leader, sharp, fair, and unshakably strong. And as for the two of us? We're not defined by the pain that brought us together. We've moved forward with clear eyes and a shared drive to build something better, both professionally and personally. If this whole journey taught me anything, it's this. We don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose who we become because of it. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's rebuilding. Stronger, wiser, and on your own terms. Because when life tears you apart, the most powerful thing you can do is rise. And that's exactly what we did.